Welcome to the world of intrigue at Paranormal M, where we delve into stories that defy rational explanation. Subscribe and turn on notifications to be part of our journey through the extraordinary. Was this an angelic intervention? When I was 5 years old, my much older sister offered to walk me and my 6-year-old sister downtown. The walk from our house to the store with my 19-year-old sister, she was intent on taking us, and it wasn't very far. This I do recall. She made me and my 6-year-old sister hold hands as she walked ahead of us by a good way, since we were dawdling as young kids as they do. The incident occurred when we walked in front of a garage that was very close to the street. As we approached the short driveway, it outbacks this long car. We didn't see it until it was approaching, without any indication that it would stop. And my 6-year-old sister says, "Lay down!" I was obedient, and neither of us screamed or yelled out to our eldest sister, while we immediately took a horizontal position. Kids who think they have a plan might just consider the whole thing adventurous. I don't know. I can still see the car rolling back, and just when the fender was at our chests, the car stopped. The driver opened the door and he walked to the back where we were lying on the cemented driveway. Half of each of our bodies visible. He simply gave instruction, me first, then my sister, to put out our hands above our heads, and he bent down and took both hands in his and gently lifted us both until we were standing upright behind his car. The whole ordeal was over in mere minutes, but enough time for our eldest sister to become aware that something was amiss, and she walked back to where we were all standing. Weirdly, the gentleman reached into his pocket and gave us each a quarter. We then set off on our way again after our eldest sister told us to say thank you to the man. I'm now 55 years old, but my partner in that odd happening will bring it up to this day, and we muse about what could have happened if we hadn't have stopped. Tragedy. And what reason could have been for him to have been alerted to 2 small little girls under his moving car? Neither of us heard any loud voices or alarms, nor did our eldest sister, as she's since attested. Another strange thing about it is that I've always asked my sister, the 6-year-old at the time, where she even got that split-second idea of laying flat rather than running. She can't remember. If he'd had seen us when looking in his mirrors, he would never have put his car in reverse and stepped on the gas. What or who interceded that day? Glitch in the Matrix, Mandela Effect Story. So when I was younger, I had 2 of my aunts come into the country and staying with us over the summer. Can't remember what year it was. They were happy to be here, and I remember them teaching me how to play Parcheesi, and after some time one of them left and another one stayed a while longer. So then I believe a year or so later, I go out of the country, and I'm there for a while. And then I'm visiting some cousins. My aunts are with me, and we're all having a good time. We decide to play board games. The games are going, and we're all playing chutes and ladders, checkers, etc. Then we decide to play Parcheesi. Game's going, and after a while I'm winning, and one of my aunts says something along the lines of, "Hey, you're pretty good. Who taught you to play so well?" I smile and glance at her and say, "You taught me when you came that one time to the United States." Room gets quiet, and they go on to tell me that it couldn't have been her. They've never been there before. I assured them that they did, and to this day, apparently that never happened. I can't say it was a dream because I'm talking like in a span of a month. That's impossible. I can't recall any significant events on TV since it was summer vacation and everything was just reruns. and I never watched sports, so I don't know. Key things I remember was I did never see anything in the room in the basement. I just never went down there, and I don't really remember leaving the house. Million voices after untying a knot spell. This history was told to me by one of my aunts when we were talking about my grandma. My grandma died when I was 8, so I have not so many memories or a clear image of how she was. So talking about her with my family kinda helps me. Well, apparently my grandma was interested in some kind of Santeria. She learned that from who knows while she was living in some random tiny town close to the Veracruz port. Years later from that, my grandma ended losing her wedding ring, so she ended sort of making like kind of a spell, where you were supposed to make some knots while praying I don't know what. It was a whole damn ritual. She was making knots while she was walking and praying around every corner of the house. So here she is walking around all the house, and she starts doing the same thing in the garden. And then I don't know how she found the ring outside on the grass. Then she kinda badly buried the cord with knots in her garden. Months passed after that, and my aunt, who likes gardening, was outside in the garden planting roses when she somehow found the cord. She told me that when she saw the cord, she thought that it could be a great idea to use that cord to tie some tree branches together. So she started to untie the knots and use the cord to tie the branches. Everything goes as normal, as usual. Then, that night, she told me that a few hours after she fell asleep, she'd got suddenly fucking awakened by a quote-unquote million voices whispering and murmuring next to her goddamn ear. So she wakes up scared and screaming to the voices for them to stop. The voices were all different, from male to female voices, all talking at the same time. Close, almost inside of her ear. My grandma woke up by her screams, and then she asked my aunt about what the fuck was going on, if she was having a nightmare or something, and she told her about the million voices. Apparently, the million voices was enough for her to understand, asking her about everything that she did that day. She told her about the gardening and the cord. Then my grandma sort of just made my aunt some tea, and the next morning, she made her a whole cleansing ritual with herbs, eggs, and prayers. My grandma untied the branches and burned the cord while making another ritual. Honestly, I can't remember all the details about the ritual and what exactly my grandma did, but it seems like she asked something with the cord/knot ritual. She asked, in parentheses, the other people to help her find this ring. And no, I have no idea what the other people means. Ghosts? Demons? I have no clue. But yeah, if you've heard something similar or know more about this knot magic, that would be interesting to know. Thanks in advance. Ask Reddit. There was a kid I knew in grade school. This was in 6th grade. Anyway, we were both the kinds of kids who were really smart, but also terrible students. So we were in a special program in the mornings to make sure that we kept our grades up so we wouldn't get kicked out of our other stuff. One Friday morning, he explained to me how he liked the first part of the Pokemon because things were simple. He'd just play the first bit and reset his file over and over. I told him I liked the middle because it still felt like there was a lot to do, and that he should play through it with me. He reset his game again that day. It was a weird conversation, and I only realized that there was subtext much later in life. The next Monday, he wasn't there in the morning. But right after I left the room and I was in the hall, I ran into him. I asked where he was, since he was always there and was basically the only friend I had there. We talked for a couple of minutes before the bell rang. I headed off to class, but he just kind of waited there. He seemed really, I don't know how to describe it, just off. Anyway, that night I get home and my mom tells me that he's killed himself over the weekend. She worked with his mother, and since that we were friends, thought I should know. I tried to explain that was impossible since I'd just seen him at school. She thought I was just confused. I still wish he decided to play through damn Pokemon with me. My old apartment had a friendly ghost cat. In 2021, I was living in an apartment with a couple of friends. We had nothing weird happen for the first 9 months that we lived there. Then one day I'm in the kitchen doing dishes and generally cleaning stuff up. We had an open floor plan where you could see the kitchen from the living room. I walked over to our couch because I had just gone to the store earlier and bought some sponges. I had left the bag on the couch, and I needed a new one. I grabbed the sponges and I turned around to walk back to the kitchen. When right there on the counter, I see this little black shadow, cat-sized. I looked at it for a second when it appeared, and it jumped off the counter, moving a stack of plates I had on the counter. So it did make noise, and I heard the thud of it hitting the ground. I immediately walked to the kitchen, and there was nothing there and no place it could have gone. I checked the cabinets and everything, and there was nothing. I didn't get any bad vibes from it, and I didn't realize that it may have been a ghost of a cat till a few hours later when I was telling my roommates about it. I do have a dog, but he was asleep on the couch by the bag that I was getting the sponges from. That, and he's 70 pounds, so he would have definitely been visible and not just a little black blob. My dog is the only pet that we ever had in that apartment. The following week, one of my roommates and her boyfriend came up to me in the living room saying that they saw a ghost cat. Their room was upstairs, and the night before they were coming downstairs, so they flipped the light switch for the stairs. There at the bottom, they swear they saw a little black cat sitting at the bottom of the stairs, and it just disappeared. We ended up naming the cat, and the other roommate got some toys for it. I tried to ask it to come with me when we moved, but fortunately, I have never seen the ghost cat again, and I do hope it's doing okay. Ask Reddit. One night in my house out in the country around 1 a.m., I was doing some dishes. Over the sink in the kitchen is a window that overlooks a wooden patio in the backyard. And about 5 feet away from the sink and window is a large sliding glass door to get out onto said patio. The window over the kitchen was open, but the patio door was not. It was so dark outside. On the other side of the window screen was pure black. I had minimal lights on in the kitchen, but nevertheless, one could definitely see my head and face in the window looking from outside. I reflected on this thought in silence when directly ahead of me, at about 10 feet of distance, I hear a cell phone ring. I freeze and stare out into the blackness of the outdoors. The cell phone continues to ring, concealed in its distance from me, but clear in its closeness. It rang maybe 3 times before slowly I hear the creaking of the patio wood. One footstep, another footstep, crick, crack, crunk, Then clunk, clunk, clunk down the steps of the patio, away from me and onto the grass of my backyard. I hear the soft but threatening footfalls on my lawn, and the cell phone ring grows fainter and more distant. Then, at what seems to be at the edge of the property, the cell phone is stifled mid-ring. Silence. Silence as I stare into nothing. A nothing that is not only probably staring back at me, but, I suddenly realize with horror, had been staring at me for an hour without my knowing. Ask Reddit. My unexplained story involves an old dog who passed a few years ago. I adopted her from a shelter when she was already 10. She was there because her previous owner had passed unexpectedly. When I received her medical records, it was very clear that her previous owner had loved her very much and taken excellent care of her. Over my 6 or so years owning her, several spooky things happened that spanned different apartments and cities, but always when she was there. The most notable was when she and I were visiting my then boyfriend in a different town. We were all getting ready for bed, so all the lights had just been turned off, and I was nearing the patio door that opened to the parking lot. I bent over to pick something up, and I hear something whiz past my head, softly thunk against the glass, and rustle all the blinds. My immediate thought was that my boyfriend was messing with me and had thrown some balled-up socks at me. I stand up and prepare to tell him off a little bit, but the light coming from the parking lot, I can see he's frozen. His eyes are as big as saucers. He heard the same thing and saw the blinds start to move. So we turn the lights on to investigate and find no evidence of anything that could have made the noise, and nothing disturbed despite the still swinging blinds. I was about 7 feet from the door, and he and my little old gal were about 10 to 15 feet away. We never came up with an explanation, but I like to think the previous owner was keeping an eye out to make sure I was taking good care of her. Ask Reddit. Well, when I was 16, my family was temporarily staying at my aunt's house. This was while we transitioned from out of state to the area. My aunt lived in an old family house that had been part in our family for generations. The house was super old. Everything was made out of real wood and creaked like hell, doors, windows, stairs, and floors. It was summertime, and me, being 16, was up around 2 a.m. in the living room chilling by myself on my laptop. All the lights were out because I didn't want to disturb anyone else in the house. The house had the basic main floor, upstairs, and basement. It was also an old row house in D.C., so you could just turn your head in either direction and see the entirety of the house. So it wasn't the largest of spaces. Well, anyway, I'm chilling, hanging out, super attentive to whatever the hell I was looking at my computer. I was laying on my tummy with my head in the direction of the front door and the stairwell that led upstairs. Then out of nowhere, I hear someone say my name from right behind me. I mean right behind me, as if someone was standing or sitting right behind me. The voice was crystal clear, not a muffle or anything. It sounded like a man's voice, although there were no men in the house. I also have an extremely unique name that isn't easily confused with other words. Instantly, I smiled, thinking it was one of my sisters or cousins playing a prank on me. I whipped my head around to catch whoever thought that maybe they were just being funny, and there was absolutely no one there. As I began to think of how someone could be pranking me, the humorous feeling I had quickly faded to terribly petrified. I realized I was the only one on the main floor. Everyone else was either upstairs in the bedrooms, or my mom was sleeping in the basement turned temporary room. I began thinking that the proximity the voice came from, literally right behind me, was too close for someone to sneak up behind me to not hear them approaching. Literally everything in this house creaked loud as hell. Literally impossible for someone to even tiptoe around without being heard. Before this moment, I was facing the staircase. So if anybody came downstairs from one of the upstairs bedrooms, I would have seen them. Within a matter of seconds, I hopped up and went off to the basement to join my mom as she slept. One of the most horrifying moments of my life. Never experienced anything remotely similar since. Thank God. Ask Reddit. This story is from a childhood friend who told me this, and it still unnerves me to this day. She was genuinely freaked out, and her family even backed up her claims, so here goes. Basically, my friend and her family moved into this rental property, which my friend said was haunted. It gave everyone an off feeling. Those who visited or stayed over would mention it for sure. I myself experienced this odd feeling of foreboding whenever I went over there, and believed in the, let's just say, consensus that the house was haunted. It honestly felt oppressive in that house, and you would feel this pitiful dread that was hard to compute into words and was extremely uncomfortable to experience, to say the least. Anyway, this particular inexplicable event, that is the basis of this post, was enough for my friend's family to pack up and stay with relatives until they moved out permanently. On this fateful afternoon, my friend had arrived back home from the park and heard an argument taking place in the kitchen between her mom and dad. My friend thought this was odd, as both her parents should be at work, so she called out, "Mom," before unlocking the front door and going inside. My friend said the house fell instantly silent, an uncanny silence like all the air had been sucked out of the place and felt stifling and wrong. Then her mom says, "Hey, we're just in here." My friend was just outside the closed kitchen door at this point and froze beyond opening. It was her mother's voice, but there was something off, like the cadence was missing, that made it her mother. It sounded flat and unnatural. My friend decided to bolt back out the front door and wait outside until her brother came home, but she said as she turned back to the house, she saw her mother peering at her from the lounge room window. But it wasn't her mother. The face was the same, everything was the same, but her face was devoid of anything that made it her mother. There was no recognition on her mother's face. There was no indication that she was looking directly at her daughter. There was no emotion in the expression, nothing. The eyes looked unstaring and utterly blank. My friend screamed and ran down the street to her mother's work and confirmed that she was there all this time and had never been home. Initially, my friend's mother reasoned that someone must have broke in, but a later investigation proved nothing had been stolen, and the back door was locked, as was the front door when my friend came home. No one could rationalize who my friend saw in that window and why it looked so much like her mother, but not fully human. So that was the deciding factor to nope the fuck out of there and find somewhere else to live. The landlord of the house denied anything like this happened when they lived there, but did admit tenants didn't stay long, saying that there was something quote-unquote wrong in the house. My friend also told me that she was the only one who actually saw anything definitively sinister in the house. But her family said they definitely felt an evil presence there, which ultimately manifested into the doppelganger experience my friend had. Utterly terrifying. How to get rid of a demon from a Ouija board. Let me start by saying I did not know what this Ouija board is until one of my girlfriends brought it into my room. I live in a women's shelter right now, so I'm close with everyone in my zone, so we all gathered to my room and one of my friends brought the damn thing over. We play and we play, but it doesn't last long because obviously everyone believes that at least someone is moving the damn thing, so we just continue playing other games. There were 5 of us. Once everyone leaves and I'm ready to go to bed, I turn off the lights and go to bed. My light switch is on. I don't care at first, it's a woman's shelter, so shit happens a lot and I'm just new to it. Whatever, I get up, I turn it off. I get back down on the bed and I hear a thud at my window. I don't believe in paranormal stuff, so I was kind of pooping myself at this point. The thud sounded kind of like somebody slammed themselves into the window. I got up, obviously turned the light on and opened the window. Nobody's there, so I close it and I go back to bed. All good. I wake up in the morning and straight away I hear something messing in my bathroom. The messing sounded just as if someone was moving stuff around and angrily fiddling with it. I was shitting myself. I left my room and called the bodyguard outside, and he locks and just looks in the bathroom. Nothing was there. Nothing was misplaced, and he was so nice about it, but I am very paranoid. My kid is about 1 month, so no way he can go into the room and start fiddling with shit. At this point, I'm up and awake, making food in the kitchen, and this is the point where I was like, okay, let me search what this Ouija board shit is. I turn around and I see a shadow of some sort of a human-looking thing in the corner. It's diarrhea at this point in my pants. I look around and there's literally nothing that can make a shadow like this. It's a rainy, dark day, obviously. You're gonna see a shadow on this day. It doesn't really move, so I turn around and when I look back, it's gone. I'm staying at my friend's room for the time being, but I wanted to know how to get rid of it. And how do I make sure nobody else in my unit gets possessed? This is the single mom unit, so I don't want to potentially put kids in danger and recovering moms into more stress and fear. A bad feeling while at Domino's. I, a 21-year-old man, with my friend, a 21-year-old female, were out shopping stuff. She needed a mirror for her room, and it was night around 9 p.m. Shops usually start closing around that time in my area. We bought the mirror and were on our way back, but we decided to stop at Domino's for pizza. We were very hungry. The Domino's was located on a narrow alley, which was very sus according to me and my friend. On our way to the Domino's, had a small encounter with a man who got angry at me for not moving aside on the road so that way he could go on a scooter. The alley was narrow, but wide enough for a scooter to go around a person, even if they're close to the center of the road. He honked at me, but I wasn't paying attention. Then he yelled at me, and I was already far ahead when I turned towards him. By the time I heard him, he was easily able to go around and on his way, but he stayed there, yelling at me. When I turned to him, he asked me if I was deaf. I didn't like the tone, so I replied, saying that he could have just went around me if he wanted to, and there's so much space for him to go around me. He started yelling in his local language, which I couldn't understand. He went ahead and stopped at some point and turned back, and he was waiting for me to get near him so that way he could tell me once again. My friend was walking ahead of me, so he didn't understand what had happened. When I reached near him, I asked if he didn't want to go now, as he was just waiting for me. He asked me where I was from, and I'm with my girlfriend, and asking if she was my girlfriend, pointing at her. I said I don't need to tell him shit, and asked him to be on his way. By that time, a car approached behind him and started honking at him as he was blocking its way. And then he did, in fact, go on his way. Me and my friend went inside Domino's, and she asked me what all this was all about, and I told her the whole thing. As we were waiting on our food to arrive, suddenly I have this very bad feeling inside of me. And I just couldn't understand why. It felt like something bad was about to happen. And after a while, my friend turned to me and told me that she wasn't feeling good either. I told her I felt the same, and it really felt like something bad was around us. We didn't know why it was happening. We had our food, and as it was raining too, I held my bike keys in palm as if I were ready to punch someone if somebody jumped us. I was walking alongside my friend towards the parking where I parked my bike, and we were soaked in rain. We're only thinking about getting home as soon as possible. We never knew we had such a strong, bad feeling around that place, but it really felt like something bad was lurking around. The fact I felt that feeling and didn't let my friend know, and then she herself telling me that she feels the same, it sent chills down my body. Odd experience in Cornwall farmhouse. So first post here, as I've been doing some thinking after reading some of these, I wanted to share one of my own experiences that I'm unsure about. When I was younger, I lived in a cottage in an extremely rural part of Cornwall in the UK until I was 10. I'm 22 now, and I had a horrifying encounter. To this day, I'm puzzled as to whether it was a dream or not. Basically, I was sleeping in the bottom bunk of a bunk bed. I'm an only child, but I like to change from time to time. I was trying to get to sleep, but I couldn't. Suddenly, I saw a dark figure poke its head over the top bunk, and it started staring at me intensely. I froze, my heart began to race. Seconds later, it threw what looked like a barrel at me, and I felt it hit my head, and I thrashed in my bed and hit the wall at the end. This is probably the most scared I've ever been in my life. I then jumped out of bed and ran to my parents' room down the corridor and could hear footsteps on the floorboards behind me chasing me. I could see stars from how hard I'd been hit. Like you know when you're about to pass out and your vision goes all blurry and fuzzy? Kinda like that. For years, I've put this down as sleep paralysis or something along those lines, but recently, I've been having doubts. I had so many other less intense experiences in that house that I have been wondering whether it was haunted. For example, I remember once my dog being extremely afraid to enter the living room of the house, and my mom, being very spiritual, asked a witch to douse the house. She told her no information, just that she wished for it to be cleansed. The lady stared at my mom and said, "Your dog is afraid. I can sense it. He is not going into that room, right?" We were shocked. How did she know this? She then explained after doing some investigating that there was a ghost of a large black cat who used to reside there, and my dog was quite afraid of them. And so it did make sense. Suffice to say, after her work was complete, my dog entered straight away and was content with being there for the rest of his days. The Latino community has very dark secrets connected to the supernatural world. Weeks ago, with some Latino friends, we talked about supernatural things through a podcast that we usually listen to while we have study groups at the university. Someone brought up the subject of strange inheritances left by relatives, in which a friend that we will call Gabriel spoke about how a sister from his grandmother, a practitioner of magic, he inherited a couple of books with very strange information from his mother. With some curiosity, we asked Gabriel to see if he could show us one. He reluctantly accepted. He warned us that it was probably not a good idea, saying that his mother had tried to kill them. But for strange reasons, the task was never achieved. Fire. Went out, throw them away, return to the living room library, give them away, return them the same day, and only explain that it was not knowledge that we should have. Even so, we pushed him to show it to us. I regret it. When he showed us one, it only seemed like a handmade book with the cover made of skin of an animal with grayish fur. I was the first one to dare to look at it, and I swear that just by taking it into my hands, fear and cold took over my body. It was quite thick. I just looked at the first few pages, and I must admit that I don't know exactly what I read. One of the pages explained in a very detailed way how to turn a house or farm animal into a black or white guardian, depending on your intentions. The next one was about secret uses of certain incredibly common flower in my country and Latin America. In general, the next page, God, it was terrible. It was an illustration of a grotesque baby-shaped creature, black skin, insect wings, and legs that I don't know what they were, looked like two spider legs bent backwards. This thing was watching a child sleep from his crib. I know there was text underneath that drawing. I did not read it. I dropped the book. A terrible fear chilled my bones and left me trembling. I almost cried and began to pray in a hasty manner. I repeated a certain well-known Bible verse. Something in my mind told me that it was better not to touch that book or read it again. My mind simply blocked the image of the creature. I can try to describe it, but I can't visualize it. But I know that my mind blocked it for a higher reason. I have to admit that I investigated later, and it was worrying to know that many Latino families have stories with these heirlooms of rare books and objects. Even so, I want to know if you or know somebody else who has one of these books in their possession, one of these relics, and if possible, to talk about it. Lightning electricity person came out of my TV. My 32-year-old husband and I were up late tonight. I work nights from home, and he was keeping me company but has since gone to bed. I can't stop thinking about what happened and what it might have been, and couldn't find anything online, so I figured I'd come here. A few hours ago, we were watching some cringe YouTube videos about 90 Day Fiancé, our guilt pleasure show. And while work was slow, talking, and nothing really out of the ordinary, the living room TV is on the wall across the room from my desk, and the open concept kitchen is to my right. I can see the whole living room and kitchen in our apartment from where I'm sitting, and he could from where he was standing in between my desk and the TV. As we are watching a person talking on the very bland background, no fireworks or anything bright, there is a white, sparkly ball of light that appears out of the TV and silently zooms super fast through the air toward the kitchen. It stops at the far corner and materialized as the dark outline of a tall person with white light sparkling around the edges facing us. I'd say a bit over 6 feet tall and a male or an androgynous build. Not really any curves and slim to average in build. It looked almost like it was spinning in that ball and landed on the balls of the feet like it had jumped from a height, slightly crouched with arms bent and a little outstretched for balance. It straightened up and disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. The crazy thing was that you could almost feel, or maybe the better word would be sense, in the air the very slight crackling or hair-raising effect that touching a staticky old TV would give you. Or maybe being outside during a thunderstorm right before lightning strikes nearby. We both saw the exact same thing at the same time, felt that same static charge in the air, and looked at each other and said, "Did you see that? What the fuck was that?" At the same time, I would 100% call an electrician or maintenance to check on the wiring or something, if not for the clear person shape. There was no storms or lightning outside either. I feel like a crazy person and wish I could have caught something on camera as proof. My paranormal experiences. When I was around 11 or 12 years old, I moved into a new home, which seems to be a tiny bit haunted. But yeah, anyways, sometime at night I had to come out of the shower and I left the bathroom. For some context, my brother's room is at the end of the hall. The bathroom is on the other side, so when you turn towards the end of the hall, leaving or entering the bathroom, you can see into my brother's room. As I was leaving, I saw a figure that I assumed to be my brother standing there. It spoke to me in a similar voice as well, but something was off about it. All the thing said was, "Hello there." It was odd, so I gave him a weird look and just responded with a confused hello back. I moved away from the door and headed towards the steps. When I turned back, it had went into the bathroom and shut the door behind it. I was just thinking, okay, whatever, he's weird, and went downstairs. Nobody passed me. No one was behind or in front of me. When I got to the basement to put my clothes in the basket, everybody was in the basement as well, including my brother, who was in the freezer looking for hot dogs, and he hadn't been in his room for a while, apparently. Later, I told my mom about the boy that I saw, and she told me that she had seen the balloon that was in the corner of the dining room get yanked down as though someone was pulling on it multiple times. She said she was able to communicate to it through the balloon. I don't remember exactly what she asked, but I do remember her telling it that it needed to leave. After that, the balloon didn't move any longer, although that's not the end of it. When I was home by myself later at night, I was eating at the dining room table when I heard the sound of someone running down the steps, then abruptly stopping. I looked over toward the direction of the stairs, and nobody was there. I was scared at the time and called my mom to ask when she would be home, which she said she would be soon, so I sat and watched TV until she did in fact get home. Another time I was home by myself. I was again eating at the dining room table when I thought I saw someone running in front of me in the kitchen, back and forth. It could have been my eyes playing a trick on me or something, but it still scared me at the time, so I went and sat outside for a little bit before going back inside and watching TV to distract myself. When I got older, things didn't seem to happen as much. Mostly just things like sounds of someone following me or tapping me while I'm alone. More recently, I was awoken to the feeling of being yanked out of my bed in the morning, which freaked me out especially even after I was fully awake. And seeing that there was nothing there but I was still being pulled out of my bed. For some reason I didn't scream, I pulled myself backwards quickly, and whatever had a hold of me finally let go. After that, I had these nightmares for a week of a woman coming from my closet or from the hallway. She would be dirty, pale, dressed in all white, and had long, messy dark hair. She would come to my bedside and sit beside me, then put her face as close as she possibly could to mine. I would close my eyes, count to 5, open them, and she would be gone. I was able to move again, and I would simply go back to sleep each time until she finally stopped showing up. I'm not sure if it's related or if I was even dreaming. For more context, the way it started would be me waking up, seeing her standing there, walking towards me. All I had to do was close my eyes and count to 5. Then she would be gone. Another recent thing is when I was outside talking to my mom, we heard the sound of footsteps and something being dragged above us. The room above the porch is my room. We got up and ran to my room. Nothing had been touched, and no one was in there at all. My brother was in his room playing a game with his friends online, so it wasn't him either. Me and my mom went back downstairs. We continued to hear the sounds, and I still hear them sometimes at night, but I just ignore them now. I believe that is all. I may update if I forgot something or if anything new happens. When my stepmom passed away. So my mom was married to my dad for 13 years, ended in divorce, and until I was 21, she lived a very single life. Until she met Becca. She met her through a friend of her job and at the time and wasn't really interested in even meeting her, but she went ahead and did it for the sake of her friend and just ended up falling in absolute love with her. They were very much committed to each other for 5 years. The last 2 of them, Becca battled stage 3 lung cancer. After a year and a half, she was told her cancer would never be cured, but her tumors had shrunk to the point that they were almost gone, and the doctors decided to consider her in remission of sorts, but wanted her back in their offices every 6 months for follow-ups and check-ins. The next 6-month check-in, she found out 1 tumor had grown back, and just as big, if not bigger, than last time. She agreed to more treatments, but she wanted to see her dad in Texas before she did. While she was in Texas, her blood pressure became unmanageable. She landed in the hospital for a short time. She decided to refuse treatment and left against orders. She passed away that same night. She was more than my mom's partner. She was my mom. She was my children's Becca. She was our protector and a beloved family member. She and I have had hard conversations, and I know I couldn't have had with any other family member. She was that one person that you could just tell it to him straight. The whole time she was with my mom, she would be the one to give me advice about my marriage and tell me how absolutely unhealthy it was for me and my kids. A couple of months after Becca passed, my husband announced to me that he had been in a relationship with another woman for 8 months and he no longer loved me, didn't want to be with me, and he was leaving. Part of me was relieved because I honestly didn't have the gall to leave, and I would have just dealt with it and gone on with my life. Probably would have just let him continue on. This is not how I am now, but part of me was dreading that part. I was going to have to live alone. I'd be raising my kids primarily alone, and I hadn't been without him, aside from a few brief breakups since I was 15. I didn't know how to be single. I stayed at my mom's a lot for the first few weeks after my split, even though I quickly got into my own, just rented a home. I just didn't want to be alone. So one day I was just having a horrible time. I was sad, crying all day. My kids were napping in the living room, 3 and 6. I was in my mom's bedroom doing my makeup, trying to stop crying, and I looked up at this picture of my mom and Becca on the mirror. I asked her, "Why didn't you stay? Are you okay? Where are you?" Of course, I knew I would get no answer. My world was rattled for about another 30 minutes later when I decided to give up on makeup, just go take a shower and try to just de-stress. My kids are the ultimate bathroom crashers, and they know no boundaries when I'm showering or if I'm on the toilet. Still to this day, and they're teens now. So I was in the shower and my younger daughter, who's 3 at the time, came into the bathroom and had a conversation with me. "Mama, I gotta tell you about a dream." Me, "Okay, baby, shoot." "You know that place that Becca likes to go and you can eat whatever you want?" Golden Corral. Me, "Yeah." "Well, I dreamed that Nani, Aunt R, and Uncle B and all of our friends were there eating dinner, and my Becca came in." Me, "That's awesome, baby." I try to go back to my shower as she continues poking her head into the shower. "Yeah, and she sat down next to me because I'm her favorite. She told me to tell you something, Mom." Me, "What'd she say?" "She said, tell your mama that I'm okay, she'll be okay, and I'm happy and I'm still here." I just started sobbing. She knew I needed her, and she went through my 3-year-old to let me know that she was there and had my back. That's all I needed. Although I continued to struggle with my separation and everything in between, I no longer felt alone, and I'm forever grateful my daughter was able to relay that message to me. The radio station. In college, I had the entire basement to myself, and at this point, I had a beautiful black cat with green eyes named Tommy. I was getting ready for bed late, and I had a kind of basic black alarm clock / radio with a red digital clock on it where it can plug in or have batteries. But really, I don't think anybody uses batteries in those. Hint. There's a reason I'm pointing this out. As I was getting ready for bed, I rolled over to face the wall. Suddenly, the radio turns on. Not from my giant stereo, but the little alarm clock next to my bed. I half rolled over and thought it was probably Tommy somehow. So I called Tommy and told her it was her bedtime. She came running in from the bathroom at the foot of my bed. Of course, I'm thoroughly confused and roll over completely to look at my alarm clock. I tried turning it off, but it didn't work. I tried changing the station. That didn't even change it. I changed between AM and FM. Nothing seemed to change. I decided to unplug it, but it still wouldn't turn off. This is odd, but convenient. I always found a screwdriver pretty useful personally, so I kept one near my bed. As odd as that sounds, I like to play with technology, and my bed was where I'd do that. So I took my screwdriver and I opened the back for the batteries. Nothing. I couldn't turn this thing off or change the station, so I was staring at it thinking of what else to do because I've tried everything I could. While staring at it, I started to zone out in my focus on fixing the problem, and I listened to the station. And I started to realize the station, which is consistent the whole time, was not the station I always kept it on, 99.9 The Rock. Instead, I started to listen to what was going on. It was both intimidating and funny at the same time. They were telling stories on the radio. The lady I was listening to was talking about how she experienced something similar to something that I heard about in family experiencing. Except hers ended differently. She said she had a picture fall, and she'd pick it up, but it fell again. When she picked it up again, it had a crack on one person's face. Shortly after that person passed. Then I hear the radio host thank the person for their ghost story and tell them all the listeners to call in if they have any ghost stories. My mind was all over the place at that point. Do I call and tell them, "Hey, I've never heard your station in my life, and apparently I needed to hear it according to my haunted house because my radio wouldn't turn back off"? Would they even believe me? Another one of the things that I thought to myself, if this had happened to me, I wouldn't have been able to believe this happened because it just seemed so wild and hilarious. But also a little creepy because why it would turn to that at that particular story. What about any other story or any other day? Why then? Why with someone dying? The Pretenders. For some sense of understanding of this huge house and the layout, I lived in this house between high school and college, and had the basement to myself, with a mother-in-law's apartment basically. I had a bedroom, huge front room downstairs, kitchenette and bathroom. The previous owners had built a kennel to breed terriers around the corner in the hall from the stairs, just outside the door from the downstairs front room. At the bottom of the stairs where the portal was located, and there was another small room in there, some storage areas on one side of the stairs, and the garage was on the other direction of the kennels. Up at the top of the stairs was a door, and it locked from the upstairs. The upstairs had another large front room, a large kitchen, a dining area, dining room, large laundry room, 3 bedrooms, and 2 bathrooms. This house was from the 1940s, and it was sold to the government for $1 million to be demolished for a new development around 2012. We rented it for a long time when we moved from my home state. So unfortunately, we did not partake in the $1 million, but we were able to appreciate the space inside the house, as well as the size of the property and the privacy. The Pretenders. One evening in college, I was on the couch in the downstairs front room, alone of course. The front room was so large that you'd be able to see even a decent-sized TV. You'd still put the couch in the center in the front room. So there was plenty of space behind the couch. I always kept the downstairs front room door closed because of the portal and the kennels around the corner in the hall at the bottom of the stairs. And the door at the top of the stairs was also always closed. Everyone kept it closed, but that's how I'd come upstairs to the kitchen and whatnot. My kitchenette door was also always closed, and my bedroom door was too, if I was in there. This evening I was watching TV downstairs on the couch in my front room, all the doors closed with my pillow and blanket. I heard the door at the top of the stairs open and close, and then I heard my mom's footsteps coming down both flights of stairs and across the hall. When my mom thought I was sleeping, she would quietly touch the doorknob and try to quietly open it, which even if I was sleeping would automatically wake me up every time. I was not actually sleeping. I was wide awake. But I heard her quietly touch the doorknob and try to quietly turn it. Then, as usual, open it just barely and quietly whisper my name. It was the same as every other time. I didn't answer, continued whispering my name repeatedly, thinking I was asleep, because I faked it. I distinctly even recall a Wendy's commercial followed by a George Lopez intro while this whole thing was happening, as weird as that is. I decided it would be better to listen to that in that moment for some reason. My mom whispered my name over and over, asking if I'm awake. She opened the door more. Then I heard her footsteps getting closer as she walked all the way through my giant front room. I don't mean just 12 feet long, I mean that there were at least 2 to 3 of the giant industrial long fluorescent lights in this house that lit up that front room. She repeated the same thing over and over until she got up behind the couch right above me, still asking if I'm awake. She repeated the same thing over and over. She eventually gave up though, and I heard her walking back out the front room. She didn't shut my front room door though. Pet peeve of mine everybody knew about. Not that anybody really came down. But something odd. Her footsteps stopped halfway up. Not that odd either. She probably was texting, or maybe she got stopped by something, or maybe sensed that I was awake and I was going to get scared when I came. I don't know. I feigned a sleepy voice and said, "What?" "Nothing, Mom." Still no response. "Mom, I heard you. I'm up. What do you want?" But still, she didn't say anything. I just saw my door open. I was annoyed at her lack of response after such persistence and leaving my door open. I decided to get up and go see what she wanted, irritated with her. Although, as I started walking towards the door, my sort of irritation faded into anxiety and fear. But I kept reassuring myself, it's just her, I'll find her. It's just another time she's going to jump out and scare me. As I got out of the front room, I started to run up the stairs. I felt something come from the shadows of the kennel behind me, almost like something was going to grab my ankles. But this was par for the course. I hated that whole area, as did my gecko. I didn't like my front room downstairs, but I hated the hall down there and the stairs and the kennel more. I ran up the stairs as fast as I could. My mom wasn't there as I circled to the next flight and got to the top. I tried grabbing the door and turning the knob, but it wouldn't open. I started banging on the door and crying. I felt like something was with me, behind me, glaring at me. I sat there for what felt like forever. It was probably only minutes. Eventually, my family came to unlock the door. They were all laughing at my expense. I started yelling at them, telling them that it was not funny to lock me down there, knowing how terrified I am of it down there. And especially since I only came up because Mom was coming down and calling my name and leaving my front room door open. Everybody looked at me, and they told me that she had been with them the whole time, watching TV. I told them no, she came down and whispered my name. I heard her footsteps. They all told me with all sincerity that they had all been upstairs watching TV together repeatedly. I told them the full story, and they apologized for locking me down there and never did it again. I was extremely freaked out by the fact that not only did they know my name, or did it know my name, it knew exactly how to mimic my mom's footsteps, behavior, and it knew best how to get my attention. And not only like it felt like I was intentionally baited by it to go up the stairs, and then I started questioning what would have happened to me if I had responded to it when it pretended to be my mom. What would have happened if I hadn't pretended to be asleep that night? But also, was it just trying to scare me? Because it had an opportunity on the stairs. Why didn't it close the door when it left? Or continue back up the stairs? And how did no one upstairs hear the door at the top of the stairs open or close? I've had all these questions all these years, and they're all still unanswered. The tickling. About 8 years ago, I was dead asleep. I woke up feeling my covers half pulled off of me, my light on, my shirt pulled up on my back facing the door, and feeling my back being tickled. My back arches when it's being tickled, but also I was the sleepiest I think I'd ever been in a long time. Like as if I had taken 5 Benadryl or something. Not that I have, I just felt like I had been hit by a tranquilizer. I was so sleepy. I woke up, saw my light on, felt a cold chill on my back, and felt like my back had been tickled. But I thought I was dreaming. I pulled my shirt back down, blankets back up, and was too tired to turn off the lights. So I just went back to bed. It happened again. Blankets pulled off, shirt on my back pulled up. I was cold and my back was colder. It felt like I was being tickled again. I really thought it was weird because no one was there. I pulled my shirt back down again and staying awake with my eyes closed slightly. Again, blanket rips off, shirt pulled up from my back, more tickling. This happened probably 10 times. me fighting harder and harder each time to stay awake until finally the blankets were pulled off the bed. So I knew it really wasn't just me doing this in my sleep and imagining it anymore. I was partially still awake. I sat up, glared towards the door, and yelled, "Knock it off, I'm trying to sleep, leave me alone, go away." I haven't had that same issue again, which makes me feel bad. Later, my family told me a similar incident that occurred around the same time to my mom's husband. I lost my stepsister at age 8 to cancer shortly before this event. Everyone used to tickle her back in the same manner. But of my biological siblings, my mom thinks that she felt closer to me, and that's why she felt sort of uncomfy. And she'd come talk to me because I was the oldest between her sisters. Also, I'm very ticklish on my back, and I'm a very light sleeper. So I'm sure that it just made it easier. I was initially writing it off as one of the other mischievous ghosts that we have always just was telling me about my family having the same thing around the same time. But I felt guilty ever since, in case she no longer felt safe to be near me in the afterlife.